Swaddy cop. Okay, so I just got done with the positive action plan. It actually was a little flat today. It was more geared towards people working in an office 40 hours a week. So on that video I talked about that doesn't really apply anymore, and more people are entrepreneurial. So speaking of entrepreneurial, the reason I'm here in Chiang Mai, and I came down a week after I had been down before, was we had gotten a call from this other cop that he was willing to take 400,000. He accepted my offer, he counter offered actually, because he was asking 420. I went in at 360 because you never pay full price if you don't have to, and he came back at 400. And normally I would have hit him with is that the best you can do? You know, all cash, close tomorrow, which is not that much of an enticement because a lot of deals get done that way here. A lot of people pay cash, especially foreign foreigners, so it's not that much of a carrot. But whatever, I would have hit him up again and try to get 380, 390, just whatever. Every 10,000 baht you save is 10,000 baht. Yeah, once again, that's $300. So whatever, but that's not the point. The point is you get it at rock bottom price, you know, as low as you can. So that was one thing. So I didn't counter because I really wanted to get this thing done, get it in my name, and just get started renting it and get income here, because I've lived here a year so far and I haven't generated any income from Thailand. You know, I got money coming in from the States, but not here. And I wanted to get a base here and start doing that, start making some money. So the ratios are verkakta, as my people say. They're not good right now. I used to blow away the 1,000 to 100 to 1 ratio, $100,000 value or purchase price for $1,000 a month rent. I used to beat that handily in the States. It was an old-fashioned rule of thumb I didn't really go by. And there's a better formula, which well, what the heck? We're talking investments. Let's do it. Piggy minus vac equals eggy minus oi equals noi. And then it actually goes down to before tax cash flow, after tax cash flow, all that crap. But just stopping at the noi is usually good enough to, especially to determine value. So I'll say it again. You might as well write it down. Piggy, PGI, minus vac, VAC, equals, put the line under, eggy, EGI, minus oi, equals noi. Oi is OE, operating expenses, and then your final number, your bottom line number. Like I said, the formula goes lower, but for right now, just go down to the noi, NOI. That's your net operating income. Piggy is your potential gross income. So you take the number of units, say you got a quad, 4, times the monthly rent. Say it's a low-end quad that gets $500 a month. So that's $2,000 a month. 4 units at $500 a month is $2,000. Follow along with me, class. And so $2,000 a month times 12 months in a year, is $24,000. So write down on your piece of paper, $24,000, and that's PGI, potential gross income. And what Piggy is if every unit of the 4 is rented every day of the year, that's what you'll make. Now here's where reality comes into play. Tenants move out. Tenants leave in the middle of the night. Tenants move out when their lease is up and give you notice. You have to advertise the place. You got to clean it up after the tenant leaves and advertise it and get a new tenant and, you know, do tenant interviews and blah, 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 blah. Very few rentals have 100% occupancy. There's usually some percentage of vacancy. If you're doing what's called a proforma means you don't have numbers for the unit yet. Because it hasn't been rented. It's a brand new house, a brand new quad, a brand new duplex, whatever. You don't have history. So if you're buying an apartment building that's run down and hasn't been properly managed in years, you really don't want to go by the numbers. You'll look at the numbers, by all means. You'll do this for me. You'll look at the actual value to see what to buy it. But a pro forma would tell you what it's going to be worth when you fix it and make it nicer and get it, you know, set up. So once again, pro forma is a assumption of future value, right? Or when you don't know the numbers. You don't know the numbers of a place because you haven't gotten them, from the seller yet, but you're looking at it and you want a quick thing of what it might be worth as opposed to the asking price. So if on a pro forma you go by 5% vacancy rate. If you're looking at an actual performing unit with a history of numbers, you plug in how many days it was vacant and it's expressed as a percentage. So, if it was vacant, 1 month out of 12, what's that, 8%? So you'd subtract 8% from the piggy, and, whatever that number is, 92% of the 24,000 is what your EGI would be, your expected gross income. So in other words, in a perfect world, you make 24 grand a year from that quad we were talking about, but you're really only expecting, your expected gross income EGI is only going to be 92% of that. And my calculator's on my phone, so go ahead and work out the numbers. I mean, we can cheat and make that 24,000. We can say that it's there's 8 units instead of 4, so that so 4 times 16 units, right, at the 500, and we know that 4 times 24,000, roughly 100,000, right? Let's cheat and say that our PGI is 100,000. That makes it easy math. So if there's 8% vacancy on the unit, then it's going to be 92,000. So you can do that in your head. 100,000 minus 8,000, 8%, 92,000 is your expected gross income. And for pro forma, as I mentioned, if you don't know the number, it doesn't have a history, we typically use 5% vacancy, right? So it'd be 95,000 out of 100,000 potential gross income. Because once again, we understand the unit's not going to be rented 365 days a year every year. There's going to be vacancies for whatever reason. It happens. It's real life. So your expected gross income is a better number to use than your potential gross income. We're not doing math based on potential. We're doing based on expected on a pro forma, or actual in the case of a unit with history. So there you go. You got your EGI. Great. So, okay, I'm going to make 95 grand in the pro forma, or 92 grand in the one that had 8% vacancy. Awesome. No. It costs money, and this is why I don't like the 100-to-1 ratio, right? Because it says a unit's worth 100,000 if it rents 1,000 a month. Well, no, because it costs money to own a rental unit. And, there's property taxes. Right? You pay property taxes when you own a property. A tenant doesn't pay that. You do. There's insurance that you need to keep, and the renter should have insurance, but that's a separate type of insurance. So your taxes and insurance, those are fixed on a yearly basis. So that's one cost. But then you've got other expenses which are considered variable that go up and down. You don't have a fixed price. It's not the same every month. So you have fixed and you have variable expenses. And then there's a third category under this OI. We're talking about the OE that you wrote down in the formula. That's OI is, once again, operating expenses. So you've got fixed, you've got variable that go up and down and they change every month. And it also depends upon your lease too, because some here when you rent a condo in Thailand, a lot of the times the electric or the water or the sewer are included. It depends. Internet is included. In America, it's very seldom that a landlord will pay the electric. It's kind of stupid to pay the electric, and I think that's because the electric is much higher in America. It's $10 for the average electric bill here. It's like 200, 300, 500 in America, depending on how much you use. So it's very rare to see electric included by the landlord. But here, yeah, it's actually quite common in Thailand. So, that expense, the amount of expenses, is going to vary from property to property and based on the lease and who pays what, right? But the landlord will, at the very least. I've never seen a lease where the landlord or the tenant's paying property taxes, right, and insurance. So those are all, once again, fixed expenses. And, if there's an HOA, once again, usually the landlord will pay it, but he might charge the tenant. It might be a pass-through, whatever. But the point is, in a pro forma, we use 40%. So I gave you the 5% number that's usually standard and accepted for vacancy. 40% is what we use for OE if we're doing a pro forma and we don't know the numbers. It's a rough estimate. Are some properties managed much better and the 40% is a high number? Yeah, absolutely. Are some properties managed terribly and the expenses run north of 40%. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking to buy one, that's actually a good candidate, because you know if you can tighten it down and get on top of it, that you can lower the expenses probably 40% or south of that, right? And the third category, before I forget, fixed variable expenses, the third category is reserved for replacement. If you plan to own this property for a long time, in 20, 30 years, shit's going to break. Water heater's going to rust out, just stop working, you know, the element burns out. Stuff breaks, machines break. It happens when you own the home, and you're a landlord, you own the rental property. You might need a roof at some point. You might need a new AC unit. And once again, in Florida, it's a big honking central unit outside, and you know it's going to cost you $3 to $5 grand to replace the air handler and/or the compressor outside. Here, they do the split unit that's behind me up on the wall, so that's a lot. You know, talking 10,000 baht, $300 for a little split unit. It's not a lot. It's funny that they have split units in America, and they cost a lot. For some reason, they cost a lot more in America than they do here, and they're used all over the place here. Maybe just economy of scale. I don't know. But anyway, that's your third OE, your part of OI: fixed expense, variable expense, and reserves for replacement. And sometimes when you look at a place that has numbers in history, they won't have anything for reserves for replacement. You know, you're going to have to replace shit. So that's an example where the OE might be artificially low. So you subtract you multiply by the percentage, you know, the OE, and subtract it. So we were at 92,000 for our example of EGI, and we were at 98 for the other. Once again, let's just cheat for this example so we can do the math in our head and not have to use a calculator. Because I don't want to do 40. Okay, fuck it. I'll do 40% of 92%. Screw it. So 4 9 is 36. So that's 36,000, and then 4 on 2 is 8. So 44,000. So 44,000 would be 40% of 92,000. Check my math, because I'm not as sharp as I used to be. So take 4,000 away. We're going to subtract it, because that's 44,000 of expenses a year, and that's reserves for replacement. That's fixed and variable. Now, once again, the actual numbers could be lower or higher than that, right? So 4,000 from 92 is 88,000. 40,000 from 88,000 is 48,000. That would be your NOI, N-O-I, net operating income. So forget that 100 to 1 ratio crap. It's what is that place making, or what could it potentially make, minus vacancy rate, comes down, minus expenses, actual operating expenses, which that 100 to 1 doesn't account for, but we do, because it's real life and expenses are a thing. So the net operating income after expenses and vacancy is the number we'll actually make. That's your paycheck, is what I call it, right? Now, it's very interesting that NOI, that 44,000, I think we came up with $48,000 is your expected net operating income on that property. In other words, $4,000 a month. That's what it comes down to, 48 divided by 12. So that 48,000 versus the price, the value, that's what drives it. So there's something called a cap rate, capitalization rate, and it varies from city to city, and sometimes it varies from area inside the city. In other words, the cap rate in suburban Jacksonville is different than the cap rate in downtown, but they're close, right? The variance is usually around 2%. So like 8 to 10% is a range, and that varies based on location, right? Downtown is different than the suburbs, right, for commercial buildings or investment properties. So 10% is pretty standard. When times get tough and property is scarce, the cap rate goes down. So I know investors who are getting as low as 2% cap rate because of the boom, in the bull market. They weren't able to find a 10% return on their investment, which is what that NOI represents. But smaller units were 6-7%. Single family homes, for instance, we're given that. Quads, duplex. Quad, if you don't know, is a four unit. Quad, it means four units. Duplex is 2 units. Triplex is 3 units. And then you got what we call multifamily, which typically a quad is a multifamily, but people usually think of it as 5 units and above. You'd call a multifamily. So 5 apartments in a complex, 8 apartments, 10 apartments, 12, 64 apartments in a building or a complex. That's multi-unit, right? So, mid 6s and 7s is what I was seeing when I was in Jacksonville 2-3 years ago. I don't know what it is right now. But when you're doing this pro forma, once again, a lot of people use 10%. And it's simple math. So going back to our $48,000 net operating income figure, right? That's the money you'd actually make from this unit we've been talking about with the vacancy and the operating expenses. You'd multiply that by 10, right? 10% means that 48,000 is 1/10 of the value. So do you understand how you'd multiply that by 10? And that's why I'm using 10%, not 8 or 7, because it's easy math. Anybody can multiply by 10. 48,000 times 10 is 480,000, just under $500,000. That's the value of the building. That's why you use this formula. Now you see, we're taking a potential gross income, what we think market rents are. We're subtracting 5% for vacancy because we don't have numbers, right? This is a pro forma. We get our EGI, which is 95,000. We subtract operating expenses, which we're estimating at 40%, and that's going to give us that expected gross income. We're going to multiply that by 10%, and that gives us the value. Now, once again, ask a commercial broker, Google it, say, what's the cap rate of Jacksonville, Florida right now? And if it's 4%, then you're going to divide by 4%, not 10%. If it's 7%, use 7%. But once again, I'm cheating using 100,000 where I can for easy math. So I'm going to use 10% cap rate, which is the going return on investment, ROI, for commercial property in that city. And that's going to give you a value of $488,000. Now you know what to buy the place for, right? And these are all, once again, assumptions. A 5% vacancy rate. Maybe it's higher, so you'd offer lower, less money. Maybe the ROI, the cap rate, return on investment, in the city is 7%. It would be lower than 488,000, right? Because you're only getting, that money represents 7% instead of 10%. So, it'd be higher. Yeah, brain is mush, brain is oatmeal. So if it's a 7% cap rate, then the 48,000 is a smaller part of a bigger number, right? Does that make sense? So it'd be more than 488,000 if you're only getting 7% return on your money. The higher the rate of return, the lower the price is. There's a ratio. Do you get it? I mean, 48,000 a year. At 10% return on your money, you're paying 488,000. At 5% of your money, you're paying double that, right? It's half the return. So it'd be double, 960,000, almost $1 million, if you're only getting a 5% return on your money. So I hope I didn't lose you there. I know it can get confusing, but once again, just do the math. You take that NOI and you multiply it, or you divide it by the cap rate, and that's why I use 10%, because you multiply by 10. It's simple, right? Whereas it was 6%, 6.5%, 5.3%. You divide it by that number, and that will give you that big number, what it's worth, the value of the property. So appraisers use that. Appraisers use the income approach. So it's good, it's accurate, and it's a good way, like I said, using the proforma to determine the value of a property. So if you're looking to buy a property and they're selling it for, $500,000, you do this PIGI minus EGI minus VAC minus OI equals NOI, right? EGI minus OI equals NOI. You do that NOI, and then you have a good idea with the going cap rate of the area what that property's worth, whether you're paying too much for it or whether it's a bargain. And more importantly, that NOI tells you what you can expect to actually get. Like I said, I call it the paycheck. That's the number that you receive every month. Now, there is an insidious institution called the Internal Revenue Service. And anytime you beat the odds and work hard and are smart and make all the right moves and prosper, they got their hands out because they suck and they're greedy and the government's wasteful. And that's, I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, the government's wasteful and spends way too much of your money. So they got their bucket with holes and they have a constant need to get your money. So there's before tax cash flow, which is that $4,000 a month we talked about. Now you got to look at your tax bracket and multiply that $48,000 income by your tax thing, because the government's going to take a third, a half, 20%, whatever. So you got to figure that in, and then the real number you're looking at is after tax cash flow, what you'll keep after the government takes their share of your hard work and thought and analysis, and it is what it is, guys. So you can go that extra step if you want and get all the way down to the real number with tax ramifications, or like I said, most people stop at NOI just to see what the price of the unit should be. So that's your piggy NOI formula, and it's a lot better than 100 times rent, or what they use in Thailand, 150 times rent. Those really don't tell you shit. They don't account for expenses and vacancies, which are real. I bought the unit. There was a 13,000 baht transfer tax. Right? That's part of the expense of the unit. So I didn't buy it for 400K. I bought it for 413K. Right? I'm going to pay the realtor. I don't have to, but I'm going to pay the realtor. That's another 12,000 baht. So now really I'm 425 into the unit. That's real money. That's an expense. I spent 6,000 baht on a big-ass TV, a 40-inch TV, a bracket to put the TV up on the wall, and a sink, and a stove. That's 6,000 baht. That's, now I'm 431 into this thing, right? And it's on a spreadsheet. You better believe it's on a spreadsheet, because that's a real cost. So I'm 22 minutes into this, and I talked about the formula, which is great, and you need to know it, but I didn't talk about the hurdles that I overcame. So I will make another video. So this will be part 1. Part 2 will be the hurdles that I faced yesterday. Damn, this boy can talk. Jesus.